My name is Alexandra Jabori. My place in Canadian history begins in Lecco, Italy. My great-grandfather Richard Bocci and wife Anne lived in Lecco, Italy. This is where they grew up and spent most of their lives. Their friends and family also resided here. They owned a farm where they grew and sold crops to support themselves. During the early 1900s, there was a drought that affected their ability to grow enough crops to sustain themselves. They were living in poverty and needed a change. Richard left Lecco and immigrated to Canada to try and start a new life, leaving his wife back home. In 1910, he arrived in Montreal, Canada, looking for work. When considering historical perspectives, one can only infer as to why my great-grandfather left his family behind. The push and pull factors would have created an emotional roller coaster that would soon intensify, as a few months after he was settled in, he received a letter from his wife revealing that she was pregnant. They kept in communication, and Anne raised their child on her own in Italy. It was a tough time for the family, but love and determination kept them together. 7 years after working in the factories of Montreal, Richard's wife Anne and son Anthony arrived in Canada. Richard had never seen his son before, so this was a joyous occasion. It must have been a sight to see a family reunite. The Boccis lived in a small townhouse in East Montreal. This was a house Richard bought before Anne and Anthony arrived so he could show them his new success in this new country. Anthony continued his schooling while struggling to learn English. Anne also worked in a factory, as Richard did too. They missed their friends and family back home, but life was much better for them in Canada. They had to work hard, but they were making money. Even though they were struggling to learn the new languages, English and French, they loved the new culture, experiences, and safety Canada brought to their lives. A few years after settling in their new lives, they had another child, a daughter named Julia. She was the oldest of 4 girls. Richard and Anne had a family of 5: Anthony, Julia, Jenny, Mary, and Nina. The youngest sibling, and most important in my eyes, was Nina Bocci, as she is my nonna. Nina was a young, smart, and intelligent girl. When she was born, her brother Anthony was already in his early 20s. Her father died when she was a young girl, so her brother was more of a father figure to her. Like all her siblings, Nina attended school. The 4 girls also grew up singing in a church choir. The children spoke a total of 3 languages: French, English, and Italian. While some aspects of my family's lives show continuity, such as Italian customs and traditions, there was also a fragile change as French-Canadian language and customs began to creep into their daily lives. My nonna was in her late teens when she caught the eye of a young man while singing in church. He was much older, but it was love at first sight. This man, by the name of Dimitri Donacci, soon married Nina. They lived in Montreal during their early relationship before moving to Toronto. Life in Toronto during World War II consisted of daily reminders of political allegiances. On one hand, the Canadian government was using propaganda to promote enlistment, encourage the returning, and warn of the Nazi society. On the other hand, French-Canadian opposition to the war was growing in Quebec, with group calling for young men to avoid supporting the war that wasn't theirs to fight. Despite all the French-Canadian commotion during World War II, Dimitri, a true Quebecer, joined the Canadian Army. He spent many years in training to become a fighter pilot. He was never sent into combat, as the time he was done the training, the war was over. Although he was disappointed not to be sent into action, it was better for his family not to take that risk. Dimitri and Nina had 2 children. The oldest was their daughter Andrea, and their youngest was their son Michael. Andrea and Michael grew up in a small town of Cobourg, Ontario. They attended high school there, where my mother Andrea was on the track and cross-country teams. After high school, my mother attended the University of Toronto, and then continued on her career to work for ExxonMobil as a technology and communications team leader. She worked and lived in Toronto and participated in pleasure squash games. That is where she met my father, Mo, a young, athletic, and intelligent man. Mo attended California State University and played football there. His parents lived in Toronto, and that is what brought him back to Canada. They later married. There have been many great moments in Toronto's history that my parents have seen, such as watching the Rogers Centre and Air Canada Centre open and witnessing the Jays World Series win. There are also some not-so-joyous occasions that they have lived through, such as the Toronto bomb plot revealing, Russell Hill subway accident, and the Toronto race riots. These are both positive and negative events in the history of our city. Andrea and Mo have two beautiful children, Maya and I. I was born in 1999 and Maya in 2003. We live in Richmond Hill, Ontario, and we are both very athletic. We both play soccer, volleyball, and run track. Maya is currently attending Pleasantville Public School, and I attend Bill Brothers Secondary School. My family has made contributions to our country, as my cousin, Private Jamie Jabori, has recently reached his role as a pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force. My family has also seen the world change and develop in many different ways, such as 9/11, YouTube and Facebook launches, Hurricane Katrina, the first African American president, ISIS, and many more world events. Although these events have not directly affected my family, they have changed the society we live in. The advances in technology have caused a shift in what is socially acceptable, which has caused innovation in how the social media affects our daily actions. Also, violent acts and violence-promoting groups such as ISIS have created changes in Canadian foreign policy. My future aspirations are to play volleyball at university level. I would like to attend McGill University and study kinesiology there. After that, I would like to continue on and study sports medicine. With my degree, I want to open up my own practice or work for a pro sports team. It is important to me that I integrate my career with sports, as from a young age, sports were important in my life. I would not feel complete if I didn't have sports in my life. Both sides of my cultural background have contributed to my personality. Taking these two ethnicities and mixing them into one gives me a distinct view on things based on how I was raised and the cultural aspects of my life. Looking back at my family history, I have learned and appreciated the actions that my great-grandfather took to provide a better life for his family by coming to Canada, and how without his efforts to overcome his struggles during the time he spent working and living in poverty, I may not be here today telling the story of my unique and interesting family.